Ladies and gentlemen, coming up now is our next panel discussion. The Vitamin D digital capsule for retail transformation by curating the next generation of omni-channel experience. Please put your hands together and welcome our distinguished panel on stage. He is Chief Operating Officer, MR DIY, Ripple Retail Private Limited. Please welcome Karthikeyan Vishnu. Welcome, Mr. Vishnu. He is Chief Operating Officer, Bima Jewel. Please welcome Gopa Kumar. He is President and Chief Business Officer, Domino's JFL. A warm welcome to Rajneet Kohli. He is President, Major Brands. A warm welcome to Tushar Ved. Joining us online, we've got the founder, High Design. Please welcome Dilip Kapoor. Mr. Dilip Kapoor, founder, High Design. Okay, he will join us online, but we'll welcome him. In the meanwhile, I'd like to welcome our moderator, Chief Revenue Officer, Vizuri, Sujay Golan. Ladies and gentlemen, this session has been partnered by Vizuri, and it's over to Sujay Golan and the panel to take us through. We will, of course, have Mr. Dilip Kapoor join us by and by while the discussion is on. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Omnichannel, which has been a major part of the discourse, not just today, but over the last 18 months and more, and just so many things have changed. Omnichannel today means different things for different brands and different flavors, and that's what we're here to explore with a very knowledgeable and an honorable panel today. At Vizuri, we power omni-channel journeys across both digital and physical channels. Just a quick introduction before we dive into the panel. We are part of the Affle Group. At Affle, we've proudly taken the India story to global markets. We've worked with high-growth digital brands across markets for over 16 years now. And overall, what we help brands do is to grow conversions on digital channels, help reach the digital consumer. And today, the digital consumer is really omni-channel, right? So anything that brands do is really meeting the needs of digital consumers. E-commerce itself has seen both acceleration but also maturity. Today, if you've got an e-commerce business, more likely you have your team figuring out how to grow your conversion rates beyond that 1 to 2% that you're seeing on your website or that you're seeing on your app today. There could be various reasons. I mean, maybe your shoppers have low intent. Maybe they want to touch and feel your product. Maybe they really are researching your product on your own sites, but hey, maybe they want to go to a marketplace to purchase it. Whatever the journey is, it's really about giving choice to the consumer, and that's something we'll explore on the panel today. Now we've got various stakeholders that are part of the process here at every brand. You have marketers who are really responsible for growing these conversion rates. They're looking at running campaigns on digital channels. They're looking at running campaigns to drive sales at stores. While we also, today we have had sessions on physical retail, and the whole physical retail sector could be malls, could be retail investment managers trying to figure out ways to grow ROI or to make money from your investments that are in physical retail. And connecting all the dots, and of course, really running the show are our customers who are choosing to go digital in unprecedented numbers. So how do all of this, or how is all of this reconciled? Um, so what we come in very quickly at Vizuri is to power a headless system, which is an API-based system that joins the dots across these channels, be it digital or physical, and essentially drives more sales. So more new customers, more sales from your existing customers, wherever or whichever channel they're on, and wherever they decide to purchase, whether they decide to purchase from your e-commerce touchpoints, whether they decide to interact with you on WhatsApp, or whether they decide that, hey, they want to touch, feel, try the product at store, right? The process or the approach is to empower consumers overall, and being able to join the dots, or to connect your digital channels with your physical stores to give shoppers or your customers that choice is all is the approach that we have taken, but what we've also found working very well and in sync with what consumers are asking for. And then I think finally, two ways in which we make this happen. One very simple to implement. So our customers who have started using this technology have found it extremely simple to integrate and take live. These are not large IT projects, and they're easy to try. And the second is being able to drive business impact for it. And because of that, we are a performance-led solution, and that really helps us to onboard quickly and start showing results in the omni-channel space. So again, whatever you are trying to do in the omni-channel space, this is certainly the right space to be, and I look forward to speaking to these wonderful set of folks today on this topic. I think good to, if we can start with an introduction. I'm sure people would love to know, in fact, both about you, your brand, also the last 18 months, while things really has changed for omni-channel retail. How have they impacted you, and are things changing now with everything around us opening up?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karthikeyan Vishnu. I represent the brand Mr. DIY. We are a Malaysian headquartered home improvement retailer. We have 1,700 stores globally. And last week we opened Turkey, and next week we are opening Spain. Well, we entered India in 2019, so just 6 months before the pandemic. That's how we introduced ourselves, our brand, into the country. And just to share what we retail, because we are popular in West and North, we are getting into North, but not much in South. So we have 10 categories in our stores. We have got newness to the Indian retail in the form of car accessories, hardware, electrical. That's the USP that we have. So any shopping mall that you go, if you thought that you can't, car accessories is something that I'm missing, you can just walk into a DIY store. Along with that, we have the best-in-class stationery to toys to gym equipments, everything. We are a value retail format, and our price points are anything around 50 rupees to a max of 3,000 rupees. So how we started, and how things took shape for us is like the earlier gentleman in the earlier panel was saying that in 1 year he had 15 business plans, and that's how it's evolved for us also. So we typically move in concentric circles. So Maharashtra was the base for us. We started with our first store in Mumbai. Things were going fine. We opened up Infinity Mall, Viviana, Big Mall, and suddenly the pandemic, Phoenix, and then suddenly the pandemic came in. We had to, put a full stop to our expansion plans. But then few months down the line, 2 months, and we said, things are not moving. This is not how, business can take shape. So what we need to do? We moved on to different geography. We went to Gujarat, followed by North. For us, as a methodology globally, how we enter into the online space or create a omni-channel experience is we strongly believe in the ecosystem. Since we are a value retailer, my cost of acquisition of a customer himself is or herself is 900 rupees and my average ticket is 250 rupees. So until and unless the customer is not going to come thrice to me, I'm not even breaking even. And I'm not in the business of just having a top line. We need to have the right kind of profits. So we strongly believe in creating and building the right ecosystem. And the support from the online space that we take is the inspirational and the informational. We have not yet got into the transactional space in the e-commerce segment. And we are using till 200 stores. That's the methodology that we use so that we have a substantial ecosystem. Thanks.
Check. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Gopa Kumar, and I'm the CEO of Bima. And just to answer that question in terms of how the pandemic has been. So before jewelry, I used to be in the food space with Future Retail, and there was a time when the pandemic hit, and I was wondering, who would buy gold now, and who would buy jewelry? This is not really the time for adornment, and maybe marriages are going to get put off, and things like that. Contrary to that, when we opened up, and just as a matter of saying, Bima has about 50 stores, and we operate predominantly in South India and also in UAE. And it's close to $1 billion in terms of sales that we cater to. We are a large format jewelry retailer. All stores are company-owned, company-operated setups. So when the pandemic, as the first stage, after the disbelief was over, and we were told with all these various government norms that you could open up stores, and you could open up allowing only certain amount of footfalls to come into your setup. We focused a lot in terms of hygiene, safety parameters, and the way our stores are. And like many of the other retailers you would have seen with the rounds that the social media has been doing in terms of all the initiatives that have been taken, we too did that. And Bima, as a brand which has been there for 97 years now, and it's a legacy brand, has always been profitable. We haven't had a single month or a single store which has not broken even, right? It's always been profitable, and that's the way we have operated. We've always kept our execution, very, very, very strong, and in terms of profitability, there has been no kind of letdown in that sense. So we opened our stores, and we saw that consumers gravitate a lot towards so-called comfort brands, brands which have enjoyed the goodwill. And our footfalls really went up. And there's a phenomenon that is happening in the jewelry space. If you saw internationally, we saw these videos of people in Thailand and people in China, Hong Kong, going out and selling their gold jewelry and kind of monetizing it. So there was this fear that, when we open up our stores, consumers would not really buy gold, but they would kind of, come in and trade in, and we'll have to pay cash out, right? So we said we will welcome that. We went out digital, gave good communication out there in the market. If consumers are really that needy and they want to kind of encash, Bima is open for them. And consumers came in, and they also we welcomed them, and we took care of consumers during that time when, probably they needed that particular service to be offered. So overall, in terms of, Bima's journey, we're expanding. We're coming into various other parts of the country. We believe that during the pandemic, the double-digit growth that we have enjoyed in terms of footfalls, in terms of sales, we're growing at high double digits. And I can tell you for a fact that, jewelry is here to stay. Marriages and jewelry buying is so culturally entwined into the whole DNA of our, Indian culture. And we are seeing more marriages happening. In fact, the ticket sizes for marriages have gone up at our stores, simply because, consumers now are, say, not spending so much money on those fancy weddings, or, having those, faraway, getaway weddings and things like that. So they are spending more on jewelry and, accumulating that as an asset also. So all of this, for us at Bima, the journey has been to, communicate in a very relevant way to the online consumer with the kind of designs, the kind of products that we sell, and try to drive that traffic from the really the online space to the offline. And I'll talk a little more about that as we move forward. Yeah.
Rajni, Domino's, of course, is a household name with unprecedented scale. What have the last 18 months been like for you, and what's it like now?
Thank you. Very good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rajneet Kohli. I'm the president for Domino's. Interesting, yes. This is 25th year for Domino's in India, and we are the largest franchise after US. Well, we're there in 92 countries. Proud to say that India is the second largest for Domino's outside, US. We are at 1,450 stores and plus more counting. All of the stores are actually company owned and company operated, and that's a big difference as well. While US is a lot of it is franchise, only 390 of the stores in US is company owned. It's a tough one, but I'm proud that I have an amazing team. We have a team of 32,000 people, and then therefore when the COVID happened, the onus of and responsibility of managing not just your stores but your team and people was the biggest one. I would say that was a big task in front of us. I would say from a Domino's perspective, we were, I would say, prepared ahead of the, little crisis. On 3rd of March, when we only had 3 cases in India, I would reach out to China counterparts and I understood what's really happening. And this is 2020, not this 2021. And when I understood the, scale of this, we went and, ordered PPs worth 8 crores on 4th, and I remember in the town hall when I was telling people, in my own team was saying, why are you pushing us for doing this? 8 crores, why are you spending? A lot in the industry were saying, what are you guys forcing? Because if you as QSR is going to start wearing masks and gloves, imagine it's going to put pressure. And I come from Delhi, if you don't wear a mask, it's a 2,000 rupees challan now. It's been 18 months. But I would say that at least we were well prepared. And we trained our teams in 48 hours on new SOPs on wearing gloves, masks, and how to do business. The second one, I think we've always been an omni-channel. I know the topic's all about that. Almost 98.7% of our business and delivery is through digital, and that's most of our own app, and not through aggregators, but our own app being there. We also started zero contact delivery because we understood the consumer psyche and data that told us that consumers really worried. If because in those days, if you remember boxes, you can get COVID through surfaces. So we started zero contact delivery. Which is that the person would keep the bag. We started delivering in the bags 6 feet away from your door and walk back. And that gave a lot of confidence to customers. By 17th of March, even before the first lockdown, we had zero contact delivery across India. So those are a few things I think helped us to turn around the business, and we've come out stronger, as only I will say that from that COVID. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tushar Ved. I'm the president of Major Brands India. We operate brands like Aldo, Charles & Keith, Bath & Body Works, Victoria's Secret Beauty, Victoria's Secret Lingerie, and Beverly Hills Polo Club, and few other brands that we have. And we are bringing few more in India in the next 2 years. So we'll hear about that soon. On the pandemic, we were totally unprepared for it. I think all of us were. I think what really helped was that we were very agile, and we were able to move very fast. I would say it was good in a sense that we were able to figure out the potential of e-commerce, which we never did before. Before pandemic, we used to do 5% of our business on e-commerce, own website and third party. Today we are doing 35%. And our plan in next 3 years was to do 25%. So in fact, we grew on the e-commerce platform because when whole of India was closed, we were lucky that we were able to sell it online. Some things that we did extensively is WhatsApp selling, customer calling, online, we did something very unique because we had stores that were supposed to open in March and April. We had furniture in the warehouse. We actually opened up some furniture, fitted those with the products we had in the warehouse, and showed it to the customer as if the store is open. So it's a very unique thing that we did where we were able to make within the warehouse a mini store and sell it and show it to the customer how this product looks if you came shopping. I think that was something very unique. One thing, the other thing that I would say is we got pushed into this, but we also realized that the potential of e-commerce is very high. I would add another thing is last 3 months have been fantastic. Customers are coming back to the stores, but we are seeing less customers coming in, but higher conversion, and they are spending more. So we have seen the customer spending average ticket value of the shopping has gone up by another 10-15%. Less customers, more shopping, and that is something we are very, very happy about. Thank you.
Thanks, Tushar. I think the point you made about growing e-commerce and as an omni-channel brand or a brand with very rich legacy with physical retail. So the first step is, of course, to start selling on marketplaces. But the growth that you've seen on your owned channels, how have you looked at owned versus, or what's been able, what has driven this growth on your own channels compared to anything else?
Okay, so let me give you some percentages. On our own channels, so we operate certain brands like Aldo.in, BathAndBodyWorks.in, and we'll be opening some more. On our own channels, we also sell to third party like Nykaa, Myntra, Amazon. We are 20% higher than any of the brands for the same product, right? Which was very, very surprising to us. And what we realized is then we went to a deep dive and said, what's going on? What we figured out, a lot of customers are coming in because of the brand name. They want that brand. The second thing is we are also seeing people are getting lost on a third-party website. So when I say lost means there were brands that we did, and if you have 1,000 brands and we are one of the brands, we are completely lost. So for a customer, it could be a second buy. They are not searching for the brand. They are searching for a product on the third party. When they come to us, they are basically looking at, oh, I want the Aldo brand, and then I want the product. Also the way the content is written, also the way the photographs are done, also the products that we put online. And a lot of our products are not discounted on our own website. We do have a section for that. So you will see a lot of products which are full price. So you get the full assortment of the store, and you get some discounted product, old season merchandise. I think that also helped us to make sure that we're at least 20% higher. I do see this trend happening across other retailers. The people in the industry I talk to, they're saying their own website is slowly doing better than a third-party website. That's something unique.
Thanks, Tushar. And Mr. Gopakumar, similar to a category like fashion, jewelry, very high involvement, and very entrenched into our purchasing behavior. How does e-commerce fit into the puzzle here? Keen to know.
Right, so you would know predominantly our focus is on the offline stores, and there's a buzz around our brand so much that we really find it difficult to completely cater the way we should. So we are obviously renovating, upsizing our stores and getting in a lot of experiences into our stores. So the first stage, before I get into specifically that part, and I'll kind of give our point of view on that. For us, it has been that, how do we enhance that experience in terms of the consumer journey towards our stores? So we've used digital very effectively for things like, appointment shopping, because Bimas tend to be so crowded. And, if you've been to a Bima down in Kerala, you would kind of identify with that. So appointment shopping is something that we kind of focused on for those consumers who probably get a little put off by the crowd that you see, and they could kind of pick a slot and come into a store and do the stuff that they have to do. And we enhanced that with a white glove service called Personal Shopper, which we introduced because this is assisted shopping. And assisted shopping for marriage, ticket sizes of marriages start as low as 5-10 lakhs. If it's the groom side, it's 5 lakhs or so. And when it goes up, it goes up to 1 crore or so. And that's a full family affair. You've got large footfalls of 15-20 people coming to your store. And so we did this white glove service, and we got good results out of all of this. Post which we thought that how do we meaningfully kind of add some value to our consumers during the pandemic. So we tied up and we launched an AR-based augmented reality kind of in-store experience and also a web experience. You could go to bima.com and try out our new designs and styles and select and do that, select the, share it with your friends and family and all of that. So we did a lot of these initiatives and we focused completely on this, and which gave good results. Being a 97-year-old setup, our consumers were happily delighted by all of this. Coming to the e-commerce bit, I wouldn't say we are in a mad rush to do it. Okay. For me, the whole arithmetic of e-commerce is not about cash burn and not about its profitability. It's very clearly profitability for us. If an e-commerce store is not able to generate the revenue of a single store, and just to give you a figure, a single store, one of our average stores would do anywhere between 200 and 250 crores a year, right? That's what we would do from a single store. So if you are at about 250, 300 crore kind of a turnover, it breaks even. Being the customer acquisition cost being what it is, at a 0.06 conversion rate, and the math we've done, and we've kind of experimented and stuff. And in the jewelry space, e-commerce, 85% is all coins and bullion, right? It's not really jewelry that is selling. And you must know that coins, bullion, all of this is a very, very low margin business, right? It's basically investors and people just collecting, and we are in the business of adornment, we are in the business of design, we are in the business of jewelry, and we really would like to sell jewelry, so we find it very difficult to really get the right solution. I'm sure people like you will help us out going ahead on this one. Lightweight jewelry, 18 karat, 14 karat is what is essentially selling in the e-commerce space. And the ticket sizes are anywhere between 15 to 20,000 rupees. Just to give you a figure, our average ticket size in our stores would be 60 to 70,000 rupees per consumer. That's what we would sell. So we would really need to have lightweight, attract the young millennials, and that's really the e-commerce spaces. So it is a spot that we are getting into. We are developing assortments for it. For us, the whole word of omni-channel, to just kind of take the physical store and take the inventory and put it up in the online space is not going to work, because 22 karat jewelry, heavy set traditional jewelry, ethnic designs, temple jewelry is not really going to sell because they're very highly involved kind of segments. So I think there's an opportunity for categories like ours to invest in assisted commerce, be it through WhatsApp, be it through video calling integrated, and being there for the consumer through that journey of putting something into the basket and then having that relevant conversation and then checking out that consumer and saying Bhima is always there, in case something goes wrong, and we could take care of you. So for us, it's not a switch, a flip a button and just get into e-commerce. It's a more involved and let's say not as easy second, third step to take. But we are in that journey. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Gopakumar. We have a fifth guest, Mr. Dilip Kapoor, founder of Hidesign Online. Welcome, Mr. Kapoor. Let me just reorient my chair. Again, such a much-loved brand, Hidesign, and with a storied history of selling across so many different touch points. What does omnichannel mean to you, Mr. Kapoor, and are things changing now over the last year and a half?
Yes, of course. I think omnichannel has really come alive during the COVID. We started working on it before that. We started working with Tata Click on it. It never really got going. But these two COVIDs have changed the whole way we look at e-commerce itself, actually. E-commerce to us used to be a very simple phenomenon. Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, whoever wanted to buy a product, resell it. It was at times it was upsetting because it was a lot of discount. Am I still there?
Yes, we can hear you. Absolutely.
Okay, sorry. But now it's become a lot more complex. our outright sales through Flipkart and all that is much lower, whereas our sales on our own website and Omni have grown substantially. I think the value, I think it came out to when Ved was talking about it, but to us, the biggest challenge has been not to up the sales. The percentage of sales on e-commerce is very high now for us. It's not a problem. It's even higher than what Ved mentioned. We are sitting at around almost 40%. I think the bigger challenge to us is how do we protect the brand. Our own stores, the average price point in our own stores is 60-70% higher. And there is no discounting in the stores. The brand is very aspirational there. So how do you maintain your brand there? And I think that's been the biggest challenge, and I think Omni has helped us greatly there, because we have the same customer who goes on Amazon or Myntra. He sees us in different places. He chooses the non-discounted product which comes out of our store at a much higher price point. The Omni price point is to us is higher than the price point at not only on Flipkart and all these, but it's even higher than our own stores. So it's a very valued customer to us. We love this customer, and I think it's going to protect our brand's image and experience on the e-commerce.
Thanks, Mr. Kapoor. And I think connecting the dots, Karthikeyan, for Mr. DIY, you're in an earlier stage of your e-commerce journey, and you've taken, I think, you look at it with a very interesting framework based on what we were just chatting about earlier. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned that, for us, it's important that we build the ecosystem. So, yes, the entire world is going digital. We would also want to hop onto the bandwagon, but there is a methodology. We just don't want to be there. And when we be there, we will create an impact. So, Sujay, if you come to my store, it's an offline marketplace. That's what I call, because there are around 10,000 SKUs in a 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. And the customer has a variety of choice. Can I use the word spoil? Yes, we do sometimes spoil the customer. So I remember whenever I call my mom and say, I'm at the store, she says, please don't get anything. That's the variety that we have. How we have used the e-commerce or the online channel is, and when the brands are spending money to go and, really be there in the online space, we have given an experience to our consumer at the stores. And for us, a lot of our customers have gone and, shot videos and put it on the YouTube. So it's all, organically, which is grown for us. So we have really not spent, we do geo-targeting marketing. That's what we do to optimize the cost. However, we have seen a lot of things, with the experience that we have provided to our consumer, that's where it is benefiting. Now, when we look, as I was explaining that, 900 rupees is my customer acquisition cost at an average price point of 250 rupees. Now, tomorrow if I have a consumer who is ordering from a place called Behrampur, now whether it's in Orissa, so and I have a store in Bhubaneswar and I have a store in Vizag, depending on the logistic cost, the GST implications and everything, if I have the right ecosystem, I know that from where I service, if it's a brick and click model that I'm implementing, from where I can, ship to the consumer, because every penny saved in logistic is going to add to your profits. So I have to be very mindful in terms of how I manage that entire ecosystem in the online. And right now, what I'm doing is we are building that up.
Got it. Now, digital, I think, gives us so many opportunities to get data, to also use the data to improve the customer experience. And Rajneet, I think with your scale, Domino's is certainly the envy of anybody who's a data fanatic. I'd love to hear from you on what's your process, and is there anything you can share on what you've done with digital data for a digitally native brand like Domino's?
Thank you. You know, the W. Edward had said, in God we trust, all others must guess data. So, and that's, my team here is smiling here because they know me that most of the time I tell them don't speak English to speak maths, that is numbers. And that's how data orientation has always been there. But I think it's the DNA of the organization. We are a technology and data-led organization. We call ourselves a food tech company. We happen to sell pizzas, happens to be there, but I think in our mindset, first was always about being digital and being data-driven. I'll give you some examples of it, how we look at data. We look at data collection in three forms, in the way we look at it. One is in terms of consumer analytics. So we use, of course, the POS data, but we have a huge, massive data lake. We look at how consumer is coming on, which channel is he coming from, what is he looking at, not just buying, I'm saying what is he looking at. What is he really buying, what's his post-customer experience. So we marry all that in a huge data lake and we keep enriching it with that. A good example of that could be, and how do we make it use of that? Its example is that 87% of the customers we looked, which is high frequency customers that we have, which is 14% but contribute a lot, actually order the same pizzas. They know the same pizza, and we were just talking, they'll add at best a side, a garlic bread or choco lava to it, but they know that pizza is, as you were saying, thin crust pepperoni for you. I was hearing you. So you don't need to really go into the entire thing. You can just do a long press on our app and it says reorder. And less than 5 seconds, your order is placed. Actually, it's placed there. You were given 5 seconds to cancel it. So we know the consumer doesn't need to really go into veg, non-veg, then into which pizzas, medium, large. He knows what he wants. And that's the way we can use our data. So that's deep understanding consumer data is one channel. The other one is in terms of product. When I talk about product, we're talking about our digital assets here. So clear understanding, and we have Google Analytics. We have a huge team of people. We have an AI team. And initially, when I joined, I had only one CTO or the CIO. Now we have a CTO, CIO, CPO, and I have an AI analytics team reporting, which their job is just to churn. The millions of data that's churned in terms of seeing what consumer is ordering from. Let me give you an example. 76% of customers order through Android, 13% through PWA, because not everybody wants to order through PWA, 11% through iOS, and 2% desktops. And which customer orders what basket size is exactly we know. For example, if I know Sujoy is coming on at 7 p.m., is where he orders, I will trigger half an hour before you because consumers are not decided. I will trigger to you what pizza you want. If you're vegetarian, I'll ping you a peppy paneer pizza. And I know last time you ordered a chocolate lava cake, I'll ping you there. And if you've gone to the cart, and I know you've not made the payment, and because cart to payment takes 3 minutes and 15 seconds, so I will start trigger to my restaurant that, okay, you can start preparing the pizza so that we can deliver you faster as well, because that's a process there. So just using data in that way. And last one is about using data on marketing in terms of return on investments on marketing, and also using data in stores. We're talking a lot about digital and physical stores. I call it physical in our way of in store, that there is a digital and physical to meet together in the stores. How can I enable my store manager and the restaurant team make their life easier using data there? So those are few examples of how we look at data. But it's a journey, not an end, still working on it. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Rajneet. And I think on that note, again, wish you all the best on your omni-channel journey. I wish we had more time to speak. We could go on and on. But thank you for your time here today. Thank you, Mr. Kapoor.
Thank you.